What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back into our coverage over the Punisher, but also Spider-Man as well. As you all know, I'm trying to do some different reading orders, and I kind of love the idea of us sitting down and covering the Punisher. Now, as you all know, when it came to Punisher, his first few appearances in Marvel Comics were mostly in Spider-Man comics. Occasionally, he would jump over to other titles like Daredevil or possibly Captain America as well, but for the most part, he was a Spider-Man character. Now, today's video, we do learn a tad bit more about the character of the Punisher in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 174 and 175. This two-part storyline is also bringing in the death of another character better known as Hitman. But before we're able to sit down and actually talk about Hitman, we have to jump over to the Punisher at first. Now, for the Punisher, it's him right now basically just arriving back in New York, except when he does see this random shop being robbed at the moment, this gun storage, and it's being robbed by an organization known as the People Liberation Front. Now, this organization never truly got big in Marvel Comics, never got big in Spider-Man comics either, but it is very important for today's storyline. Now, with that being said, you do have the Punisher go out of his way to stop these guys who are trying to rob this place of weapons. Now, one of the robbers is actually a lady, but before this section ends, you do have the Punisher go ahead and begin to interrogate her, where he is able to get information out of her, but the information will not be used until later on. Now, when we do pick up with Spider-Man, it's him right now just arriving back home after fighting against the Molten Man. Now, here's the thing, because around this time in Marvel Comics, the Molten Man had just died in the previous issue. But also for Peter, he was injured in that last storyline. So it's him right now just being able to arrive at home, but luckily for him, right after the cleaning lady had left his room. But now we have to jump over to, well, Hitman and also the leader of the People Liberation Front. Now, when it comes to Hitman, this is not his first appearance in Marvel Comics. Matter of fact, he first appeared over in Spectacular Spider-Man number 4 and number 5, I want to say, a two-part storyline. But either way, for Hitman, the last time he was in Spider-Man comics, he was actually working for the Magia, this mob organization who had actually took a hit out on Spider-Man, and so you had Hitman try his best to stop Spider-Man. But of course, he had basically failed. But right now for the Hitman, he now has a new job. His new job is to go after J. Jonah Jameson. And the reason why, because JJ has been publishing some bad things about the People Liberation Front. And so, of course, they want him out of the picture. So Hitman's job is grab JJ and bring him back over here to the leader of the organization. Now, earlier, I had said that when it came to Peter Parker, he had fought against the Molten Man in a previous storyline. Matter of fact, the one before this one right here. But for the Molten Man, he was also the stepbrother to Liz Allen. Now, here's the thing, because in that last storyline, we were kind of left to believe the Molten Man had officially died. And so with his death, it really did bother Liz a lot. And so she had just disappeared. She had just moved out of her apartment, but did not tell anyone where she was going to. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, she was dating Harry Osborn. And so for Harry, he's kind of freaking out. And really, around this time in Marvel Comics, Harry was the Green Goblin. And so for Harry, he was going through a lot of mental health. And so, of course, when you have Flash make a small joke about Liz Allen, it does tick off Harry a lot, where he tries to attack Flash, but luckily for Flash, Peter was there. You do have Peter and Flash take Harry over to his therapist, and that'll be a character known as Barton Hamilton. Now, for me personally, I kind of feel like some folks do forget about this character, and the reason why I'm saying he's somewhat important is because he does become the third Green Goblin in Marvel Comics. And so for him, he tries to use hypnosis as a way to treat Harry's mental health, but it's also him learning the secrets in the history of the Green Goblin. And so now we do switch over to, well, J. Jonah Jameson, and we see him meeting up with a character known as Marla Madison. Now, for Marla Madison, in our last video for The Punisher, we met this character. And matter of fact, it was JJ trying to team up with her as a way to go after Spider-Man. Now, of course, at this point in time, it's now the two characters getting together. So you do have the two characters trying to hang out in Jonah's office. The problem is that when they do go into his office, they're confronted by Hitman, who's basically there to kidnap JJ. Now, while you have JJ talk to Hitman, you have Marla being able to hit a button on the intercom to tell everyone else in the office at the Daily Bugle that they need some help. And so, of course, you do have Robbie call security, but when he does, Peter just arrived. So, of course, with Peter, he realized he has to go be Spider-Man to save Jonah's life. And so this kind of leads into the ending of the first chapter, because you do have Peter change into his Spider-Man outfit, but you also have the Punisher arriving as well, because remember, earlier he did interrogate that woman and she basically said, okay, cool. For my organization, our next target is going to be J. Jonah Jameson. And so, of course, for the Punisher, he wants to try to protect JJ. And so when you do have Peter arrive, you also have the Punisher arriving at the same time. Now, when both characters go inside, it does begin to cause a lot of commotion because you also have security arrive as well. And for security, who basically works for JJ, they believe that Peter Parker, Spider-Man here, is also an enemy. So with security, the Punisher, Hitman, Jonah, Madison, Dr. Madison, and also Spider-Man, it does cause a lot of commotion in this one office. And you do have Hitman being able to use tear gas as a way to escape. Now, this begins like us learning a tad bit more about the origin of the Punisher. Because you do have Hitman take JJ up to the rooftop of the Daily Bugle. And the reason why, because he has a chopper as a way to escape. Now, when you do have Spider-Man arrive, he does try his best to stop Hitman from escaping, but you did have the Punisher arrive as well. Here's the thing. When the Punisher does arrive, he tells us that he actually knows Hitman very well. He recognized him earlier in the battle in the office. And for Hitman, he was kind of hoping that Frank Castle would remember him. And so this begins us learning about their connection with one another in the second chapter. But before we're able to learn what is their connection, you do have Hitman being able to get away because you do have the Punisher just trying to shoot down the chopper that Hitman is currently using, and you have Spider-Man trying his best to stop the Punisher because, well, Hitman's right now holding on to J. Jonah Jameson. Now, you do have Peter go out of his way to put a spider tracer on the helicopter so that they can find Hitman later on, as he does fly away. Now, again, we are going to learn a tad bit more about the origin of the Punisher, but not just yet, because for our heroes, they do have to just, run away for now because you do have more security arrive. But of course, they will try their best to hunt down Hitman. But we do jump over to Robbie Robertson, who's also checking in on Dr. Madison, where you kind of have just Robbie admitting that, hey, you know what? I do care for J. Jonah Jameson. He's kind of a close friend of mine. And honestly, it seemed very minor, but it's also Dr. Madison kind of expressing how she truly feels for JJ as well. And so this kind of leads into us actually learning, what is the connection between Hitman and also the Punisher? Now, I know I've kind of been holding out on this for the entire video, and honestly, it's because it came at the very end of the storyline, but it's not that much. You see, when it came to Punisher, when he was fighting in the war, he almost got killed off by one of his enemies. But at the very last second, he was saved by another soldier. And of course, that other soldier is no other than Hitman. Now, Hitman said, like, listen, I saved your life. So basically, you owe me a life now. Now, one line right there will become very important at the very end of this storyline. But yeah, that is the connection between the Punisher and Hitman. Now, for a brief moment, we do jump back over to Harry Osborn. Harry's still with his therapist, and you basically have his therapist trying to supposedly help Harry out, but he does the wrong thing like Flash did earlier, where it makes Harry want to attack him. Now, we're kind of left to believe in the possibility that Harry had just killed the guy off, but again, that guy does become the third Green Goblin in Marvel Comics. And so that kind of leads us into the ending of the storyline, where you do have Punisher and Spider-Man being able to find Hitman. Now, when they do find Hitman, of course, he's also with the leader of the People's Liberation Front. And they do have an all-out battle on the Statue of Liberty as well. But going ahead and skipping to the end, it does get to that point where you do have Spider-Man being able to save JJ at the very last second, but also is now Peter hanging for his life. Now, at the same time, you also have Hitman hanging for his life as well. And so for the Punisher, he has to choose somebody. And of course, he does choose Spider-Man and JJ. Now for Hitman, he did say in the past, when they're in the military, I told you, I saved your life, which means now you owe me a life, which of course means his own life. So you have Hitman basically fall to his death. Now for Hitman, he stayed dead for a very long time in Marvel Comics until one particular storyline that was done by Dan Slott. And so, of course, Hitman did come back in the picture again in Marvel Comics. But yeah, for the Punisher, that was another character of his introducing the pages of Spider-Man comics. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.